Welcome to another episode of Keys to the Kingdom, the web version, presented by Claves, Regni Ministries and the UP Catholic, the newspaper of the Diocese of Marquette. I'm Kevin Branson, president of Claves, Regni Ministries, and I'm here with my co-host for the TV show and for the web version, Father Ryan Ford, our vice chairman of Claves, Regni, and also a priest of the Diocese of Marquette, here where we're taping in Marquette, Michigan. When we left our last episode, we were talking about specifically the keys of the kingdom, Claves Regni, and what was given to Peter by Christ and what is carried on through the church to this day in Pope Benedict XVI. So I guess I'll just get right down to it. What is specifically the keys of the kingdom that Jesus gave Peter and his successors?
Good question. So right in Matthew 16 is the text where Jesus says, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. So that text has been one of the classic texts to speak of Peter's role in the church. And specifically, Christ came as the kingdom himself. He is the kingdom. Pope Benedict talks a lot about this, that he is the one where the reign of God, the authority of God, is present in him. He is the one who brings the kingdom to the earth in his very taking a body, a human body, flesh and blood, his soul to himself, and in uniting it with his divinity as the Son of God. And so he reigns over that human nature of his, and so makes it, imbues it, fills it with his divinity. And that is our hope then of reigning with him forever in heaven. So what does it mean that then he gives Peter the keys of the kingdom? Means, well, he gives him his own authority. He gives him his own, a share, we would say, in his divine authority over his church. So that whatever decisions, as far as Peter makes, as far as it's traditionally been seen as, well, in binding and loosing sins, forgiving sins, releasing sins, also making authoritative decisions, also preserving the faith, that the gates of hell shall not prevail against the church, that he will preserve the faith in himself as the source of the true doctrine, true expression of the faith for all times until the end of the world. So basically that's what the keys of the kingdom has been seen as meaning that he gives to Peter.
Excellent. Speaking of the Gospel of Matthew, at the beginning we know that it traces the genealogy, the Davidic line, so to speak, and that Jesus on earth is born of the Davidic line. And Jesus is known as, quote, the son of David. And we know that David was King David, the king. And so could you talk a little bit about that, of how Jesus, being Christ the king, coming in the line of David, but also then Peter being his chief minister, prime minister, and giving him those keys, and what that would mean to a first century Jew who's familiar with the Davidic kingship?
Yeah, so the kingship played a huge role in Israel, in the life of Israel. And specifically, God's promise to David that his kingship and his line shall endure forever. But in the reality of Israel was that his kingship did not endure forever. The line was broken. There was no Davidic king for hundreds of years, all through the exile, even before and then after the exile. So it became this promise of a new king will be coming. And of course that's fulfilled in Christ as the king, proclaimed as the king in David's line through Saint Joseph. So what it means that he has these keys of the kingdom to give to his prime minister is, we often talk about giving someone the key to the city, That means, well, that person has access, to the city. He can go wherever he wants. He kind of has shares in the authority of the mayor. And so, or a prime minister shares in the authority of the king, say in a parliamentary prime minister kingship like England or something, And so what this means is that the king had a steward. We see this in the book of Isaiah, that Isaiah prophesies that this chief steward the keys will be taken from him and given to another. Right? So what this means is this keys of sharing in the king's role as taking care of the day-to-day matters of the kingdom. You didn't go straight to the king. You went to his chief steward, his prime minister, who held the keys. So the key is simply a sign, a symbol of authority, sharing in the authority of the king. So this was present in ancient Israel. This was present. A first century Jew would have this in mind, would know this about the prime minister, chief steward of the kingdom, who had and shared in the king's authority to govern the temporal realities, the day-to-day workings of the kingdom. So when Jesus gives this as the king to Peter, he's saying, you are my chief steward, you are my prime minister, you are the one who will be, when I leave and ascend back to heaven, you are the one that I charge with in caring for my church. And this is an office, it could pass, the keys could pass from one to another, which we see in the book of Isaiah. So the fact that this would remain until the end of the earth, that the gates of hell should not prevail against it, that it should remain until the end of the time, shows that Christ intended for it to be passed on then, after Peter died, to be passed on to his next successor and such. So basically that's what it means, to take care of his church, to take charge of his church, and confirm the brethren in faith, to be a servant. The Catechism speaks in paragraph 786 about the keys have to be seen as far as Christ making himself the servant of all. The king was supposed to be the first servant, especially of the poor. If you were poor and had no family to care for you, your only defender was the king. And so the fact that Peter's role is not to lord his authority over us, but to be a servant, just as Christ came to serve.
You mentioned the heavenly king, that Jesus came to fulfill the Davidic kingship, but in a heavenly way, not an earthly military rule,
right,
but in a heavenly way. So Peter is that vicar, that prime minister of that heavenly kingdom.
Yes, I mean his leadership is primarily spiritual, preserving the faith, preserving us in charity, and then, kind of showing us how to follow Christ in the day-to-day realities of modern life today.
So it's very, very important for people to take away that Peter is not a military ruler, in that kind of sense, but that he does have real authority as Jesus' prime minister. I mean, I think that's so important for the audience to realize, is that, Jesus, the Lord of the universe, gave a human being serving in essentially a divine office real authority, the authority of God, and so that he carries those keys, those spiritual keys, and speaks for Christ and acts for Christ when he pronounces things officially. I think it's very important, which is why his office is so remarkable.
Yes, very good. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Well, that's going to have to do it for another episode of Keys of the Kingdom web version. We've discussed Peter and his office and his successors, and particularly the Keys of the Kingdom. But we're going to continue on discussing the Petrine office, and we're going to discuss next time unity, and after that we'll also be discussing infallibility. So please continue to stay tuned online at upcatholic.org or clavesregni.com, and continue to watch these episodes here on Keys of the Kingdom web version. Thank you.